Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Malone Speakers, episode 71. I'm Dave Hoenigman coming in from Yokohama, Japan, and we are welcoming a very special guest coming in from just a few train stops away, Dr. David Griffiths. Welcome.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
Too many Daves, I hear. Lots of Daves on this show.
There are. So you are the fifth Dave we've had as a guest on the show.
Cool.
in only 71 episodes. So it is rather amazing.
Yeah.
and we did an episode about David Bowie, right? So
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yeah, I was watching that this morning.
Yeah, Diamond Dogs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you chose I was going to give you a bit more of an introduction. A celebrated lawyer, professor, academic. Yeah,
That's me.
Yeah, drinking buddy extraordinaire.
Yeah.
David Griffiths.
Yeah.
And you chose today's album, right? Which I was very delighted with because I am also a great fan of this album. Lou Reed and John Cale's 1990 tribute to Andy Warhol, Songs for Drella, right? And why did you choose Songs for Drella?
Well, I think it's when I was growing up in the 70s, I had older brothers and they listened to stuff like Bowie, Pink Floyd, you name it. And there was one album one of my brothers had. It was actually a best of compilation of Lou Reed's music. And it had songs from Transformer, a couple of Velvet Underground songs. So that was my introduction. And I think many of us are introduced to music through older siblings, I think, and their maybe friends, older siblings. So it got into my head quite early. And then I never heard of the Velvet Underground. That was my introduction. And then later at university, I think I started listening to Transformer quite a lot. And then in the late 80s, my brother gave me the New York album and Songs for Drella. I was totally hooked. I was obsessed with the lyrics and everything. And only then I thought I'd better try Velvet Underground. I know some of my friends used to listen to Velvet Underground, and I thought that must be pretentious nonsense because it's all from the 60s. But I finally got to it, kind of backwards to front. Mm-hmm. And I was totally hooked. And I just went through all Velvet Underground quite late in my life. Not that late. I was like 25, I guess, when I got into Velvet Underground. And Songs for Drella was the doorway to all of that. It told the story of the Velvets, Andy sponsoring the band, and it just made me just become aware of the immensity of Lou Reed and his work and the people he worked with. So that's why I chose it. And the words are so brilliant. They're kind of stuck in my head, as you know. And whenever I meet someone who knows Songs for Drella, that's my cat. Mm-hmm. Whenever I meet someone who knows Songs for Drella, we are immediately friends for life because it assumes a similar importance to everyone who knows it. We should develop a handshake for it.
Yeah.
So we can get through all the conversational infrastructure and get straight to the point that we know Songs for Drella. That's why I chose it. He's a brilliant writer of lyrics, Lou Reed, I think. I think he studied poetry at Syracuse University.
Yeah, with Delmore Schwartz.
Yeah. And yeah, go on. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, no, I just like what you said about it. It assumes a similar importance to everyone who knows it. Yeah. I think that's true.
Yeah, he said Delmore was a great influence on his writing. He said he taught him how to write. I've got a quote here, actually. He said, Schwartz taught me how, with the simplest language imaginable, very short, you can accomplish the most extraordinary things. So I think Songs for Drella is an example of that. Very simple, short sentences with simple language and it's just so effective. It just teaches you how you should write. You know, it's a good lesson in writing, I think. Not only creative writing, but all sorts.
I took a kind of a similar path to you, right? Transformer, New York, Songs for Drella, like those were, yeah, that made me a Lou Reed fan. And then I went back to the Velvets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and now I'm just a fan of all of it. But yeah, but this was definitely one of the albums that really I remember when I bought this album, because yeah, I think I had Transformer and New York, and I wasn't sure if this was the next album I wanted to buy, right? Because like, you know, before the internet, you just didn't know like which, you know, like I wasn't sure if this, I mean, when you look at the cover of the album, it does, I mean, it does look pretentious. You got, which, yeah. So I remember, I remember being in the record store, and I think all the CDs were behind. I had to ask the guy to like open the case. You ask the guy to open the case to look at the CDs. So I was looking at this, and the guy's kind of hovering around me, right? Like he clearly wanted me to ask him about it, right? I'm like, okay, is this a good Lou Reed album? And he said, well, I would only recommend it for very serious Lou Reed fans, is what he said to me. And, I don't know. At that point, I felt kind of challenged, and I'm like, "All right, I'm going to take the plunge into this." But see, I don't agree with him on that. I mean, I think it's very, very, you know, once you start listening to it, it's very easy to get into.
Yeah, very accessible. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it looks a bit intimidating, right? Yeah. But no, I mean, once, you know, kicks off with a Small Town, and yeah,
Small Town's a blast.
Yeah,
it's just superb. I think you should play it. Even is that possible on this show?
Yeah, we could play a bit of Small Town too. Well, let me at least, for those who don't know, at least mention the concept of this album. So of course, Lou Reed and John Cale were together in the Velvet Underground for the first two Velvet albums, right? Velvet's and Nico, and White Light, White Heat, right? And John Cale left, or I guess was kicked out. I think you would know more about that from I haven't seen that documentary, but yeah, it sounds like John Cale was kicked out, and then they didn't record together again, right? From 68 until 88, they started working on this album. So 20 years, and it was recorded in 89, I guess. So it had been more than 20 years since they recorded together, right? And they got yeah, so when you look at the album, you can see the shadow, the watermark of Warhol's face in the background. I didn't notice that for many years. So in my mind, it was just their faces on a black screen, right?
Yeah.
But, so I almost wonder, because I bought the album twice. I wonder if the early albums didn't have the floating Warhol, or I'm not sure.
I wonder. I bought it as a tape cassette. But that's long since disappeared. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah.
But anyways, so during that time when they were in the Velvet Underground together, Andy Warhol, right, the famous artist, was acting as the manager, among other things, of the Velvet Underground, the producer of their first album. I can't picture him twiddling knobs, but yeah, he was the producer of the first album, did the, you know, iconic artwork of the first album.
Yeah.
His name is very predominantly on the cover of the first album. So they were kind of an Andy Warhol product, right? At the time.
Got the first album on my shirt.
Oh, nice.
Banana.
Oh. Oh, I didn't. Can you show that again?
Oh, where is it? Okay.
Oh, nice. Beautiful.
I'm in black and white today, as I explained before, in sympathy to the cover, the black and white album cover.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's appropriate.
Anyway, sorry, I stopped you in full flow.
No. I just wanted to set that up a bit for people who don't know. And Andy Warhol passed away in '87. If I remember correctly, Lou and John started talking at the memorial service, kind of rekindled their relationship and decided to make an album to celebrate or at least comment on Andy Warhol, right?
Yeah.
Songs for Drella, the name Drella is a mixture of Dracula and Cinderella, right? One of Warhol's superstars that hung out at the factory, I think, coined that nickname. Which I don't feel like I've seen or read that nickname anywhere else, right? But it's the name of this album, right? Songs for Drella. The first track on the album, which I think is very charming and kind of sets the tone, they tell the story of Andy Warhol, right, growing up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, kind of a very arty kid in kind of a blue collar surrounding, right?
Yeah.
And I thought we can play that track really quickly just to kick off our conversation. Just a moment. Okay. Track 1, Small Town.
When you're growing up in a small town, when you're growing up in a small town, when you're growing up in a small town, you say, no one famous ever came from here. When you're growing up in a small town and you're having a nervous breakdown and you think that you'll never escape it, yourself or the place that you live, where did Picasso come from? There's no Michelangelo coming from Pittsburgh. If art is the tip of the iceberg, I'm the part sinking below. When you're growing up in a small town, bad skin, bad eyes, gay and fatty, people look at you funny. When you're in a small town, my father worked in construction. It's not something for which I am suited. Oh, what is something for which you were suited? Getting out of here. I hate being odd in a small town. If they stare, let them stare in New York City. At this pink-eyed painting albino, how far can my fantasy go? I'm no dolly coming from Pittsburgh, no adorable lisping Capote, my hero. Oh, do you think I could meet him? I'd camp out at his front door. There's only one good thing about a small town. There's only one good use for a small town. There's only one good thing about a small town. You know that you want to get out. When you're growing up in a small town, you know you'll grow down in a small town. There's only one good use for a small town. You hate it, and you know you'll have to leave.
Yeah.
Wow. But my wife used to belong to a dance group in Auckland, a contemporary dance group, and they did a performance of Warhol, of Songs for Drella.
Wow.
And when they played that song, it was the first song, I guess, the first dance. At the end, everyone just laughs. There was laughter all through the audience, just the final line.
Wow.
You know, you hate it because you know you have to leave, or what, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The last line.
There's only one good thing about a small town. You hate it, so you know you have to leave. Yeah.
Because they played that, they did the performance in a few small towns, so it was quite. And in the big towns, of course, everyone's left a small town, so we all know what it means, isn't it? It's like he needed to get out. Everyone needs to get out at some point. Sounds like he did, like Warhol.
Yeah. Wow,
Hmm.
that's amazing. They perform the whole album as a dance performance.
Some of it, yeah. Like
Wow.
maybe 6 tracks.
Wow.
Maybe.
Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't have any images from it though. I wish I could show them.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just it. Well, I think what you said at one point is when anyone who's a fan of this album like knows all the words to the track, like it wouldn't surprise me at all, right? If you were just listening to that track with someone who's a fan of the album, if they just belted out every line, you'd be like, yeah, of course. Of course you know every line.
Yeah.
And he paints just a vivid picture of what it had to be like for Warhol. You know, bad skin, bad eyes, gay and fatty, people look at you funny.
Yeah.
My father worked in construction. It's not something for which I am suited. Oh, you suited for, like, just that resentment of who do you think you are, you know?
Yeah. Good.
And yeah, I mean, I think just a great track to pull you into the album, pull you into the story, right?
Yeah. It's interesting when, you know, I hesitated to do this show because I always think, I'm a bit shy anyway, but I always think, I remember Keith Richards said that writing about music is like dancing to architecture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a certain amount of truth in that. And I was wondering what the hell I was going to talk about on this show. But there is plenty to talk about, of course. But the point I'd make is that the songs speak for themselves. They're so clear and well written and well sung, really easy to hear the lyrics. It just rolls out. That guy who sold you the CD, he didn't know what he's talking about, did he? It's so easy and accessible.
Yeah.
A lot of people used to tell me, like, if people listen to Lou Reed or Leonard Cohen, they're all people who just want to slit their wrists. Well, it's not true. Both of those artists, their music's full of humor and wit, and obviously there's a bit of depression there as well, like heroin and all that sort of thing, getting shot. There's a bit of this album is about him getting shot by one of his fans or supporters.
Valerie Solanas. Yeah, I think just a hanger on, you know. I mean, from what I understand about the factory, I mean, which always fascinated me, and they talk about on this album, it seemed to be like a pretty like open door policy, like anyone who wanted to show up and hang out could, right?
Yeah.
And as Warhol became more and more famous, I mean, you could see where that would be problematic, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and they talk about it was 1968, I believe, he was shot. Yeah, so right in the middle of this time when he was when he was with
he was shot 2 days before Bobby Kennedy was shot.
Okay, wow.
It's an interesting story. Like when Warhol said when he woke up from his operation after being shot, there was a TV and he saw the Kennedy assassination. And he thought it was JFK being assassinated all over again. He'd been transported back into time.
Wow.
So Bobby died, but Andy survived, I guess. Yeah.
But he was pretty seriously injured though, right? Because even though he died 20 years later, it was still related to this, from my understanding, right?
I believe so. Yeah, the bullet went through both of his lungs, his spleen, and his liver. I don't know how you survived that, but he did. And I think he did die of a gallbladder operation, a complication in 1987. It wasn't expected. So he just thought, I think the song on this album called A Dream, he says, wouldn't it be funny if I didn't wake up from this dream? And I think that's a reference to him dying during an operation, maybe. One of the interesting things about the album is, if you look at the cover, the title of the album is Songs for Drella - a Fiction. It's actually called A Fictional Story. So it's on the inside cover, actually, in the dust jacket on the inside. So if you open, this is my CD version, there's a brief intro by Lou, and it talks about how this is a fiction, a fictitious story. And I wondered if that's because a lot of the album is about how he died in an operation, and it could be defamation of the hospital. So they said this is actually a fictional story, but it's kind of like a metafiction, isn't it? Like it's not actually an accurate biography. It's just a series of like vignettes about his life, isn't it? Often told by the point of view of other people. So it is a fiction in a way. It's something I've always found curious, that why did they have to call it a fiction? You're an English lit guy, aren't you? Can you explain that?
Well, yeah, I like your theory there about the hospital, but
yeah.
I also feel like when anyone talks about those days, anyone that was surrounding the factory and the Velvets, I mean, all the stories kind of conflict, and like it's just a messed up jumble of. I think a lot of drugs were going on. I think people were coming and going constantly, right? I mean,
yeah. So no one really knows. It's like
yeah.
when I look at my own life, I can't remember what happened.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
some memory I've got is accurate, or
yeah,
that's my own life.
Yeah, so maybe just calling it a fiction was a way to say, like, okay, these are the memories we have that have survived.
Yeah.
They could be just as flawed as anyone else's account, but here we go. We're gonna.
Yeah. I think that's the better explanation than my legal one.
Yeah, and it's not, it's a lot of it is like self-deprecating, right? There's parts of it where Warhol's talking against Lou Reed, right?
Yeah.
Warhol calling Lou Reed a rat, right? So he's not he got red and he called me a rat. It was the worst word he could think of. I'd never seen him like that.
Yeah. I thought it's just work.
Yeah. So they're not even necessarily talking about like happy memories, a lot of the time.
A lot of it's unhappy. Yeah. Like he said the last time he saw Warhol was at the MTV Music Awards, and he turned away from him and ignored him.
Yep.
That's the last time he saw him.
Yeah.
And he obviously feels pretty cut up about that. Like in the final song, when he says goodbye to Andy, he mentions that I rejected you, I turned away from you. This is my way of saying thank you and goodbye. I find the last song very moving. It's very rare that Lou Reed lets down his cool veneer in his work. And I think that's one of the rare occasions you see that. And I think it's good that he does that. It just humanizes the whole album a bit. It's not as cool. Like it's a gentle touch at the end, which I like. I think some people don't like that because Lou Reed's kind of let go of his persona, which he shouldn't do, maybe. I thought it was a good thing to do there.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when you're talking about a departed friend or mentor, I mean, why would you have to be a tough guy then, right?
Yeah.
And he mentions that Lou Reed didn't invite him to his wedding, right? That's part of the, like, how could he not invite me to his wedding?
Yeah, that's right. I was so proud of the Velvets, but look what he's done to me. Yeah. I made their first album cover. I said it should be in black and white, but they didn't listen to me. They just think I'm old and stupid and don't care about me.
Yeah. You can't tell anyone anything these days. Yeah. Okay. Well, of course, any discussion of John Cale, we've done an episode about his solo work in a previous episode, and we mentioned him producing the Modern Lovers album. So he comes up often on this show in our discussions, and every time he comes up, I have to show this photo of of myself and John Cale after he performed. This is 2017, so just a few years ago.
Yeah,
when he performed at Tokyo Blue Note. And
wow, he looks pretty good. He must be 70 something by now.
Yeah. He's
did he talk to you?
I think I was just like, so we watched the show, and then for some reason my friend Hero and I were just kind of lingering. We weren't in the Blue Note is like the kind of dinner theater type place. We just didn't feel compelled to rush out, right? We kind of let everybody go out, and he and I were sitting there, and then as we were just walking toward the exit, Cale came out, right? And I think Hero talked to him more than I did. I was just like, oh my God. Because I mean, I consider him, rock and roll royalty. And but Hero is a photographer, and he had a big, nice big camera with him, and he's like, can we take photos? And yeah, John Cale was totally cool. And
good.
Yeah, and I was especially happy. So I don't remember saying much to him, to be honest, but I was especially happy when I saw this photo, just to see how he still has that kind of badass, Velvet Underground vibe, all these years later. So
I've heard him described as a predatory moth. Moth.
Predatory moth. What does that mean?
That's what he looks like when he's playing the violin, like in this picture.
Let me let's take a look at that. Oh, okay.
You see that? I think he looks like a moth a little bit.
Okay. I can see it. I can see it.
I've never seen Lou Reed play or John Cale or my other hero, David Bowie. I had opportunities to do that, to see them play in Tokyo. And I didn't go, partly because I'm useless at buying tickets, as we both know.
Yeah.
But partly I was afraid of seeing my heroes, like later in their career, give a bad performance. So I didn't want to go. And if I'd met Bowie face to face, I'd have just dissolved on the spot.
Yeah.
It's always dangerous to meet your heroes, they say, isn't it? So, but it sounds like John was okay to you, though.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know if I said much. So it was but he was cool enough to take the photo with me.
Yeah.
I think I remember that kind of late Lou Reed I have the same thing about, do I want to shell out a lot of bucks to see old stars, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when Lou Reed came, it must have been before 2005, because my friend Greg was still here, and we talked about a little bit, like, I don't know, I'm sure it was expensive, like Lou Reed, but then we made up our mind, like, all right, we're gonna go, and then it was sold out. I did see him play in Cleveland though in the 90s. That would have been the 90s. So I've seen, I at least saw both of them. But yeah, I mean, would have been great to see the Velvets play in the in the
back
60s.
in the day. Yeah. One of the things I always loved about the Velvets, among many things, is their first album, the Banana album, came out the same month I was born. Which I was delighted to discover. You know how that sort of thing really resonates when you're a fan.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, I always wish I could time travel. I wouldn't go back to save Kennedy or anything. I'd go back and watch the Velvets play.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful, wouldn't it? Like early in their career, when they're still hungry and desperate, that would be the time to see them.
Yeah.
And they don't know if they're going to get anywhere, and that would be the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not possible, not yet anyway.
Yeah.
So Bowie's the same for me.
That would be, that would be very high on my, if I could see any show ever. I think it'd be seeing the Velvets with John Cale in their heyday.
Yeah.
So certainly be up there.
Yeah. I just realized Valerie Solanas was an actor. She was a leader of a group called the Society for Cutting Up Men.
Yeah, Scum. She wrote the Scum Manifesto. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So there's that movie. Have you ever seen that movie? I Shot Andy Warhol. It's called.
Yeah, with Lily Tompkins in it. Is that right?
Lily Taylor.
Lily Taylor. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah. I think it's 90s, so probably 25 years old already. But I remember seeing that in the theater. And is it Bowie plays Warhol in that, or is it something else?
Bowie plays Warhol in Basquiat, film Basquiat.
Okay, yeah.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because he did meet Warhol and he actually sang the song that he wrote about Warhol in Hunky Dory. You know, Andy Warhol looks to scream, hang him on the wall.
Sure.
And Warhol didn't like it. He hated
really?
it.
Oh.
And that's the only time they met, apparently. And then later he played Warhol. I wonder what Warhol would have thought of that.
Huh. So why did Warhol dislike the track?
I don't know. I read an account of their meeting and he said, "Oh, that's nice," and just walked away. Imagine Bowie writes a song about you and you just walk away. Imagine doing that. It's pretty early in Bowie's career, but like 71 or something. He hadn't made it in the States, I don't think.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I would have assumed they would have had a relationship at some point. Well, this is right. Just to give people an idea of the role that Warhol played. So, I mean, the Velvets would practice in the factory, right? Or they'd rehearse in the factory, which was Andy Warhol's New York City studio space / party pad / I don't know, debaucherous drug den, you know, among other things. But it is interesting that there was, I mean, I think Warhol kind of piled a lot of concept onto the band, right? I mean, I'm sure like Lou Reed was smart enough to see that there were great benefits for the Velvets to be associated with Warhol, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, they're going to get more attention. They're being written about and discussed, and they kind of have Warhol's stamp of approval. And who knows? Maybe without Warhol, you know, we wouldn't still be talking about them today. I mean,
I wonder, yeah.
Possibly, but I mean, not to take away from the music they created, but you know, a lot of times awesome music is forgotten, right? Or doesn't get the attention it deserves. And even in their day, the Velvets didn't get the attention they deserved to the degree that they deserved, but over the years they would, right? But
slow burning, weren't they? A slow burner.
Yeah. But
Brian Eno said that they only sold 20,000 records of the first album, but everyone who listened to it made a rock band. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's true.
Yeah.
That's one of the interesting things about the Velvet Underground for me is when I listened to a lot of music in the 80s and I finally got to the Velvet Underground in the 90s. And I suddenly realized all the music I loved in the 80s was actually not derivatives, wrong word, but it's spawned by the Velvet Underground. I saw it. I finally saw that.
Yeah.
And it's such a revelation, isn't it, when you discover the Velvet Underground? You think that sounds just like this band that I like down the road, and it's not a coincidence, is it?
Yeah.
It's a direct link.
I mean, there's some bands that have a whole career based on the sound of one Velvet song, kind of, right? just extending one Velvet Underground idea. I mean, they're up there with being as influential as the Beatles, I would say. Maybe not in the mainstream world, but certainly in the indie rock or experimental rock, you know, whatever you want to call it. So Warhol kind of took them under his wing. And well, for one thing, okay, so he had the idea that Nico should join the band, right? This beautiful German model who was hanging out at the factory. So Lou Reed wasn't even crazy about that idea, right? I mean, Lou Reed wanted to be the front man. I mean, I think even within the four of them, I mean, I think Lou Reed had an ambition to be a solo artist anyway. You know, it's just a matter of time anyway. But Warhol says, okay, we need Nico in the band because Lou, I guess Lou isn't dynamic enough to be a front man. And then on top of that, we're going to show movies, right? We're going to show, you know, project visual images on the band while they're playing. And we're going to have like dancers performing around them, with whips and doing kind of performance art around them as they're playing, right?
Yeah.
Which is, it's all cool, and it did come together for a while, but you could see how guys like, the core members of the band, right? Lou Reed, John Cale, Sterling Morrison, and Maureen Tucker might start to feel like, is Warhol calling too many of the shots?
I think so.
Yeah.
And they look cheesed off in this picture, don't they? Or are they just being a cool rock band? I'm not sure which. They're like saying, why do we have to do this?
Yeah. Yeah. They always look kind of pissed off in photos. That's why I'm so happy that that like if John Cale was smiling in this photo, it would have, it wouldn't have been as meaningful to me. I like that he looks as cool as he always did.
Yeah. I just saw my name it says his name is Belloc is my name. Is that what it says?
Yeah. That won't show up on the video though. Why is that there?
Someone put it there when I was having a Zoom drink the other day. I only just noticed it. I've got to get that right. Okay, sorry.
It'll be okay. I don't think it shows up when they're recording.
Okay.
But yeah, there's like even the fact that there are so many amazing photos of the Velvet Underground from this time is a testament to the fact that they were in Warhol's, universe where everything's just being documented, right? And it just made them a high profile band. So they kind of became like in the art world, you want to say, like a high profile band before their music was even accepted in a way. Like they just have a very unique arc, I would say.
Yeah. And once they made it, they got rid of Warhol, didn't they? It seems. Maybe that's a bit harsh, but Lou obviously didn't have enough power to assert himself to keep Nico out of the band. He needed Warhol's money, I guess, just to produce the album and everything. Almost like he's looking at Nico in that picture, isn't it? Like, I'm going to get rid of you. Yes. I like her contribution though to the first album.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be the same without it. That's very, very true.
Yeah, like they made it work, right? She's an amazing singer, and she seemed to at least get into the concept of the band, so it worked. See, I almost think it's kind of an extension of Warhol's idea, where like he'll just film anybody, like he'll just film the people who are hanging out at the factory. Is it the superstars? Is that what they were called? It's the superstars. Yeah. He
coined the word superstar.
Oh, really?
Warhol. Yeah.
So that was
he called them superstars. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Apparently, that's what I read.
I was just wondering if I got the term, but so that was the first time people started using the word superstar.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Apparently.
Okay. Wow.
And the song Starlight talks about that, I think. Starlight means movie, like the light from movie stars, Starlight. Yeah, he liked recording people, didn't he? He used to tell them, you sit in front of this camera for the next 30 minutes and I'll just record your face. Do whatever you want. And I think, those are very famous videos he made. I haven't seen many of them. They do show some of them in the Velvet Underground documentary. He also famously filmed the Empire State Building for a whole day, which he mentions in Style It Takes, the third song, I think. It's a really wonderful song, that, I think, as well. Yeah.
I almost think so that concept where, okay, if we just take this superstar and put him or her in front of the camera and turn it on, and it'll suddenly be art, right?
Yeah.
So it's more like just about framing, or like framing the situation. And he believes it will lead to something valuable. But if in this case, it actually kind of does, right? So he's like, all right, we got this band, you know, they're starting to sound kind of interesting. All right, let me just throw this German model in there and let's just shine some images on them and hope for the best. And it did kind of have that thrown together vibe, but it just turned out that it was amazing, right? So it's almost like the level of just brilliance that the Velvets were able to achieve is like just a testament to Warhol's vision to a degree. If I'm not taking that too far.
No, it's fine. I agree.
But
yeah, the whole idea of videoing people and making them famous, that's a big part of our culture now, isn't it? Like with YouTubers and you know, TikTok. What we're doing right now, in fact, is a kind of a byproduct of that idea that Warhol had, that everyone would be famous for 15 minutes. One day. And
we're all Warhol's children.
Yeah. At the moment, there's a series on Netflix, the Warhol Diaries. I just started watching that this morning. And in one of the songs in Drella, he says, "I wish I was a robot or a machine without a feeling or a thought." In the Warhol Diaries on Netflix, there's actually a robot reading his diaries, like a robot, an AI generated voice of Warhol as a young man. So it's actually his voice that's been projected using AI technology.
Wow. Okay.
It's like a fake video or a fake audio, I guess, which his family agreed to, apparently. Because the diary only came out 2 years after he died, I think. So it's obviously not him. It's obviously not him. But it's very interesting to hear him talking as a young man, reading his diary in an unaffected way, just talking like a normal person, which is not what you normally saw when he gave interviews. Usually in interviews, Warhol was very terse, and he used to play with the interviewers, I think.
Yeah.
He had this image of himself, partly to protect himself, I think. Because he's quite a shy man, I think.
And I think Lou Reed took some of his interview chops from Warhol.
Maybe. Yeah. Don't give them anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Treat them with contempt, play with them, and then just reject them.
Yeah. So is that, I'm a bit holding off on getting into that docu-series, but it's good what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I liked it. It's just what I thought it would be. Yeah, and it's good. It reminded me of the documentary that came out last year about the Velvet Underground. There's some of the same people. They talk to people who knew him, and then they have footage with his voice reading his diaries. I've only just started it, partly to get into the mood for this session we're doing now. It looks good.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm just holding off a little bit because I know I'll want to binge it.
Yeah.
But this, like what I mentioned before, when I don't know, when the Please Kill Me, the book Please Kill Me, I have it in the other room. The prologue of the book is all about this scene, right? Warhol and the Velvets. And like this guy, Gerard Malanga, right? So he was the guy that would be on the stage with the whip, right? While the Velvets are playing, right?
Yeah.
But when you read him talk about it years later, he makes it sound like he was just as important as everyone else. Like, no, I think it was about the music. It's great that you were doing your whip dance, but I don't, I'm not sure if what you were doing is as important as what, the actual members of the band were doing. So you could see that just being in Warhol's orbit, you kind of have to be this big conglomerate of people, right? We need to find something for Gerard. It just seemed to be Warhol's attitude that everyone there has to, make themselves artistically useful, right? Which is kind of beautiful, but you could also see how that would piss off Lou Reed.
Yeah, definitely.
And
He looks pissed off there again, doesn't he, Lou Reed?
Yeah.
In that picture.
It probably pissed off Mo Tucker. So I don't know. It's just fascinating because he did a lot of good for the band. You can't deny that, but you could also see that it. I don't know. But ultimately things worked out. We have 4 amazing albums out of this.
Yeah.
For something that appeared unsustainable. The fact that they did put down 4 albums.
Yeah.
Even though Cale left after 2.
Yeah.
Was fired after 2, but so we should be grateful.
Yeah, we should.
But yeah, it's fun to look at these old pictures. Yeah, they all. Yeah, they've really perfected that. The idea of looking angry and pissed off.
How many bands have copied that look over the years?
Yeah.
Like the cover album, pissed off band look. I wonder if they invented that. Maybe not. I'm sure that was around before the Velvets.
Well, it was
Maybe
certainly.
not, God knows.
It was certainly a contrast to like any like hippie, colorful hippie bands, right? And all that imagery. I mean, they're all wearing, dark clothes, dark sunglasses, right?
Yeah.
I especially like Nico's look here, right? She looks like an angry teacher or something, right?
Yeah.
Yep. One more. I think they took the show out to LA at some right, LA, and I think they went up to San Francisco, and they used to come to Cleveland fairly regularly. So they were like doing a bit of touring, but I think it was mostly focused in New York City.
Right. Yeah.
So then what I read is that they didn't record, Lou Reed and John Cale did not record together until nearly 2 decades later. But there is this picture of them in the mid-70s rehearsing. I don't know what this is for, but yeah, John Cale, Lou Reed, and also Patti Smith and David Byrne. There are photos of them rehearsing together. So I don't know if this was for a live.
I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
You could probably Google that, couldn't you? Or put it into YouTube even.
Yeah.
Something might come up.
Yeah. So yeah, I encourage viewers to research what this was all about. I've seen it, this photo labeled as 75, but also as 76. So whatever, mid 70s. Right. But but this is when they really started working together again in the late 80s, working on songs for Drella, right?
Yeah.
And it was interesting that they performed it live right before they recorded the album at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, right, in late 89.
Right. There's a video of that, isn't there?
Yeah. Which is on YouTube. Yeah. So there's there's they're well documented. Anything connected to the Velvets seems to be very well documented.
Yeah.
So this is another picture of them together about that time, I think, before Brooklyn Academy performance.
Lou Reed saying, "Don't take any bloody pictures."
Yeah. See what go ahead.
I think every time Cale and Reed worked together, Cale said, "I'm never going to work with them again."
Yeah.
He said you couldn't do anything with him. If you tried to be nice to him, he got even more angry, apparently.
Oh, really?
He's so crotchety.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they say anyway.
Mm-hmm. You could see how different. I mean, just look at this. The pic. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, look at Lou's got a mullet, right? I mean, I mean, just look at the drastic difference in their haircuts. Tells you how, what a different page these two are on, right?
Yeah.
He said he never wanted to work with him again after Drella, but then 3 years later was the Velvet Underground reunion, right?
Yeah.
Which of course didn't last long. And then I think after that he said, okay, now I'm really never working with him again.
That's another thing I never saw as well. I never saw one of those shows.
I don't think it toured extensively. I think it was
Right.
There's one in Paris that they recorded. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
it was the kind of thing that went to, 75 different cities. I don't think so. But
No, it's not.
what I like to think about this photo is right, it's like a press conference and everyone's just badgering them about, okay, well, when are the Velvets getting back together? Yeah. Like it's nice that you did this cute little album about Warhol, but when are the Velvets getting back together?
Yeah.
See, that's what's kind of surprising about the fact that Songs for Drella is such an amazing album and an accessible album. Is you would almost think they're doing it just for their own benefit, like just to work out their own emotions with Warhol and to just bury the axe among them. So, like, there's so much backstory to it that you could almost expect it to just be unaccessible or just over the top arty farty, right?
Yeah, that's right. You'd expect that almost, but the music's so good, it just takes you away, sweeps you away. It's just, yeah. Can we listen to another song?
Absolutely. Right. Give me a second. All right. Yes.
Yeah, well, this is a song about the time when Warhol was shot and that people warned him not to keep the factory open, but he didn't listen to them because he needed people to come. He needed to consume people, I think, as part of his own work. People would come and see him and then he'd discard them. But finally, one of these people came in and shot him. And it's a very telling song about how celebrities actually live quite difficult lives, I think. That anything can happen if you're in the public eye. And I think it's just a beautiful song. I really love the way it starts. And also John Cale's keyboards are amazing, I think, during the song. Okay, should we do it?
Yep.
Friends have said to lock the door and have an open house no more. They said the factory must change and slowly slip away. But if I have to live in fear, where will I get my ideas with all those crazy people gone? Will I slowly slip away? Still there's no more Billy name. Undine is not the same. Wonton and the turtle gone. Slowly slip away. Slowly slip away. If I close the factory door and don't see those people anymore, if I give in to infamy, I'll slowly slip away. I know it seems that friends are right. Hello daylight, goodbye night, but stillness is so quiet here. Think I'll slowly slip away. What can I do by myself? It's good to hear from someone else. It's good to hear a crazy voice. Will not slip away. Will not slip away. If I have to live in fear, my ideas will slowly slip away. If I have to live in fear, I'm afraid my life will slip away. If you can't see me past my door, why your thoughts could slowly slip away. If I have to lock the door, another life exists, no more slip away. Friends have said to lock the door, watch out for what comes through that door. They said the factory must change, but I don't.
Yeah, pretty serious and sad song, and I just love that song. Very sweetly sung too, I think, by Lou.
Yeah.
He's not known as a singer, is he? But he's a good talker when he's a talking singer, isn't he? Or something like that, like a poet, I guess.
So he says something like, if the people can't be here anymore, I will slip away. So it's like Warhol like needed those people around him to kind of exert his own identity, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, which is what he was doing with the Velvets to some degree, the spin he was putting on them. But I mean, it made me think of how much Lou Reed clearly took from Andy Warhol when so Andy Warhol, like this, he sees such value in portraying all these people who come to the factory. But when you think about Walk on the Wild Side, right, what became Lou's breakout hit in 1972, I mean, really, he's mentioning a lot of people and stories like who came to the factory. Like it's almost an extension of like that album is very much an extension of Warhol, right? There's a song called Andy's Chest on there.
Correct. Yeah.
And, you know,
it's about his bullet wound, isn't it? Andy's chest, the scar on his chest.
Oh, okay. Wow, I never knew that. So, okay.
Two of the songs are actually Velvet Underground songs, I think, in Transformer. Like Satellite of Love is actually recorded by the Velvets.
Oh, really? Oh.
But it became Lou's song, really, didn't it? In his solo career.
Okay. Yeah, there was some overlap there. Because people think Transformer was his first solo, but there was one before, right?
Really?
Didn't. I think it was kind of half-assed, and it was a reworking of some Velvet stuff. And but that's when Bowie came in, right? And Bowie produced Transformer, and I mean, Transformer, I think is one. I mean, Bowie got Lou back on track, right? It's the same thing he did with Iggy Pop, right?
Yeah.
So
exactly, he packaged him.
Yeah. He was really a positive force, you know, well beyond just his own art, you know.
Yeah.
But I just think it's interesting that, okay, so Lou Reed fired Warhol as the manager. And it sounds like there was a lot of sour feelings at the time, which makes perfect sense to me, amid all that chaos. But then when he's out of that a couple years later and he makes an album, you can really see like Warhol's mark all over it, right?
Yeah.
And
very true.
What I said about how he would act in interviews, if you watch some of his like interviews from the 70s, like, wow, it almost looks like he's pretending to be Warhol, right?
Yeah.
And he had like his hair dyed silver or blonde for a while too, right? So it was it's
very true. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
It's just fascinating stuff.
Yeah. What's your favorite song from the album? If you have one.
From
Drella.
Yeah. Drella? Okay. All right. Yeah, well, we can move forward to that. I just wanted to quickly orient people here. Yeah, when we're talking about the Velvet Underground, there are four albums. They're all excellent. They're all spectacular. As you could see here. So John Cale left after 68. I think Lou fired Warhol about 68, maybe even before White Light, White Heat, right? But
Sounds right, yeah.
but in any case, so this was their history together with the Velvets. Now the late 80s. So Lou Reed had this was a late career. You would call it a smash hit, I would say, by his standard, right? I mean, they would play Dirty Boulevard on MTV.
Yeah.
I mean, Romeo and Juliet was an amazing song. I mean, I think just those two songs probably hooked a lot of people in, and the whole album is just spectacular. I mean, for he would have been 47 or so, right? Because it was the thinking around that time is that rock stars were washed up in their 40s. So this was this was quite a dynamic comeback. And then he did songs for Drella. John Cale, I don't know as much about this album, Words for the Dying, but both these guys had long, successful solo careers, right? So it was, and then they come back together to do this. This album, Wrong Way Up, was with Brian Eno.
Okay.
Yeah, so that takes us to 1990s Songs for Drella. Okay, so you're asking me about some of my favorite tracks?
Yeah, it's always an impossible question to answer, but what comes first into your head when you get asked that?
Well, because I feel like we talked about the beginning of the album to some degree, right? Small Town. What song I really love is Nobody But You, right? Yeah. That's a beautiful song. But I feel like, I think we've only discussed songs that Lou Reed has done to vocals, because John Cale does some great vocal work on here. Trouble with Classicists is great, right?
Yeah, it's excellent. That's a great vocal job done by Cale on that, isn't it? His voice, his Welsh kind of tenor's voice, just really nails it. Yeah, that's a great song too.
I mean, he has a great angry voice. So I like when John Cale has the opportunity to be angry in a song. I mean, it's a special treat. And he's angry in this song. Style It Takes is great. Work. I mean, Work is Work helps me understand how Warhol was so successful. Like just that they're just talking about his work ethic as an artist. You're not supposed to just sit around waiting for inspiration to kind of descend on you. It's like, no, you gotta get to work, right?
Yeah.
And there are scenes in the song of like a Warhol kind of yelling at a young Lou Reed, right?
Yeah.
So I guess Lou Reed, at this time, we're going to say Lou Reed's about early 20s and Warhol would be about late 30s. Do you think?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
The time period we're talking about. So, so that great line, right, where he says, Andy asks him how many songs he's written that day, right? I'd written 0. I lied and said 10, right?
He said, "You won't be young forever. You should have written 15."
Yeah. He said I was lazy. I said I was young. You won't be young forever. You should have written 15. It's work. The most important thing is work, right? And that's even the name, the name of his studio, The Factory. He wanted just this idea of all these artists working together, right? That was his vision. Yes, I'm a big fan of that song. But there's no misstep on this album, I would say. I mean,
none, no missteps. I agree.
I mean, Open House, which you've talked about. We get that insight into what Warhol's home life was like, right?
Yeah, his upbringing with his mother.
Yeah,
she was Czechoslovakian. Told him to be welcoming to people. Invite them in for tea.
Yep.
Yeah.
and just an extension of that, right? Some old school like
Yeah.
Czech ideas, which he extended into the Factory. And then it's almost like he took this good concept, he almost took it too far, because then you got Valerie Solanas showing up, right?
Yeah, he industrialized that welcoming concept
Mhm.
to his cost. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But we also see the good that comes out of that, right? Because
Yeah,
the Velvets themselves, this album, yeah, I mean it's all very thought-provoking and fascinating. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that so I remember seeing in the same theater I saw I Shot Andy Warhol, right? There was also the Nico documentary around that time, right? Nico Icon. And just, like we said, last year, there's a new Velvets documentary. There's a new Warhol Diaries docuseries up. I mean, it's just a fascinating time.
Yeah.
And it's just
Totally.
not a coincidence that people continue to be fascinated with it, right?
Yeah. It's very often you don't even talk about his artwork, do you? Well, I don't. I mean, obviously I'm aware of it, the Marilyn Monroe pictures. Usually you end up just talking about Warhol, don't you? And people often said his main work of art was himself, his method, his character, his personality. I agree with that. I mean, obviously his art definitely had an impact. Everyone knows his art, don't they? Like the different primary colors and the repeated images, which is a song, isn't it, as well? What song's that? Images.
Images.
The eighth track.
I
think images are worth repeating.
Yeah.
And repeating.
And
images. Those images.
See, the album helps you understand Warhol better, right? Which I think, like what we said before, I would almost expect it to not, like, I would expect it to be like some totally obtuse, like kind of insider, inside joke type thing, like that would just make Warhol feel more distant. But it's completely the opposite, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
The like images gives you insight into Warhol's thinking for making those repeated images, right? And it's
nobody but you is also about sort of fan worship, isn't it? Like obsessive relationships. When I did my PhD, I had a supervisor who was really what's the right word? He was psychic. He was inside my head. I couldn't get rid of him. And this song reminded me of that relationship, like the supervisor relationship. When you're writing a thesis, this is this guy that you're really dependent on. And if the relationship's dysfunctional in any way, then people are going to get hurt. So I'm still friends with my supervisor, by the way, just in case you're watching this, Paul.
You're not planning to shoot him?
No, not yet. I might wait a while. I can't get back to New Zealand at the moment. Maybe I can. I think I can. I made a compilation of songs for my PhD when I finished, and Nobody But You was one of the songs I chose because it reminded me of an unhealthy relationship, which is what I had with my supervisor. Not his fault at all. It's just an unhealthy, imbalanced kind of relationship. So that was the song I chose from this album.
Oh, really?
I'll give you that. I'll burn that for you actually one day.
Sure. Well, it's interesting what you're saying, because I think if I remember correctly, in the movie I Shot Andy Warhol, after she shoots him, she says something like, I had to shoot him, he just became too big in my life, or something like that. So it's almost exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Obviously he fed off that. and it was unhealthy for him as well.
Hmm.
After he did lock the factory doors, did that affect his output of art? I have no idea.
Yeah,
Was he
I
a
don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it would mean,
Yeah.
what do you mean by effect? You mean the quality of art or the number of works or?
All those things. Like it
Hmm.
happened, he got shot in 68. So was there a turning point in his artwork at that point as well? I don't know. I'm not well enough informed to answer that.
Yeah.
The song implies that, doesn't it? Like, I needed these people, and
Yeah,
now I
yeah,
have
yeah.
to keep them away.
Hmm. Hmm.
That would be a good essay to write if you're an
Yeah.
art historian.
Hmm.
Mm.
So I wrote a report, a paper that I had published. Is called "Was Andy Warhol the Godfather of the Internet?"
Yeah,
Which relates to what we were talking about, what he said about 15 minutes of fame and all this, and as long as you have a camera running, it's going to be valuable to some degree. I'll yeah, I should send you the link to that.
please do. What was your conclusion in a nutshell?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I thought he predicted a lot of what happened, and
Yeah.
I thought he was very influential, and yeah, like I said before, we're his children.
Yeah.
I mean, it is such a shame. He died when he was 58, I think, right?
Mm.
It would have been nice to have another 20 years of 20 or more years of Warhol,
Mm.
just to
To enlighten us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what he would have thought
Hmm.
of the world we live in now, like the internet and all the other stuff. I miss his sense of humor, actually. Can I show something that he wrote?
Sure.
Can I share screen?
Sure.
Can you let me in?
Give me a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What are we looking at, Dr. Griffiths?
Well, thank you. This is a book that he published in 1975, Andy Warhol. It's the philosophy of Andy Warhol from A to B and back again. It consists of a series of dialogues between A and B. It's hilarious. It's like a Stoic philosophy tract with Andy Warhol's injection of humor and other weirdness from his mind. And the thing I loved about it is it's really funny. I think this conversation is very funny. I want to make a film that showed how sad and lyrical it is for those two old ladies to be living in those rooms full of newspapers and cats. And then A says, you shouldn't make it sad. You should just say, this is how people today are doing things. And I think that's just hilarious. And it feeds into your idea, I think, about how he invented the modern YouTube age, where everything about our lives is interesting. You can put it on YouTube and everyone will watch it and you'll be famous. And this is a good example of that. The book's amazing. This is a great book. It's quite long. Well, not that long, like 150 pages maybe. It's just full of little tidbits like that. And it makes you laugh. It makes you laugh and smile, and a lot of it's very true as well. Like, you don't have to feel sad for people all the time. Not everything that happens to people is a tragedy, although these days when you read about the word tragedy, it's used very loosely, I think. Warhol had a dry way of looking at life, as you'd expect from an artist who had a very abstract view of life, or something like that. Yeah, I recommend this book. It's well worth reading. And it's actually online. I found it online this morning, the whole book, I think.
Oh, really? Oh.
I think so. Yeah.
So I haven't read this one, but I read Popism.
What's that?
That's another one around this time.
Okay.
Yeah. To me, it strikes me as somewhere between the diaries and this and the philosophy. Like it's
Okay.
Just glimpses of goings on, around the around those times. But yeah, a great read, right? So
yeah.
And you never know, like, because he always had this tape recorder with him, right? He would record all these conversations, and then type it up, or probably have someone type it up. Probably someone who showed up at the factory. Okay, the way I'm going to make you useful is to listen to these recordings and type it up, and then it put it out as a book. But I don't know. I think he was onto something, because it's really. So people who are anti-Warhol, they'll say, okay, he's undermining, what it means to be an author by doing that, right? Like to invite hundreds of people into your house, record what everyone says, and then turn it into a book. I mean, that idea angers some people, like it's a shortcut or something. Just the same as, like, still to this day, some people are angry that there's a painting of a soup can, right?
Yeah.
Like you're undermining art, right? You're not taking it, you're making a mockery of what previous artists have done, right?
Yeah, what art should be, exactly.
But the product is enjoyable,
I think we grew up with this stuff. It already existed, didn't we? The soup can. So it just seems part of the wallpaper of our lives.
Yeah.
It must have been much more radical and controversial when he did it at the time. Is it controversial though? I think people just thought it was pointless.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Anti-Warholites, anti-Warholism. It's probably a word for that. Yeah, he made objects assume a new importance. That was the idea, wasn't it? You can see something in a different light. That's why he repeated images with different backgrounds. And in the Open House song, there are some good lyrics too, which talk about ordinary objects, don't they?
You want to?
You've got, put it on.
Okay.
Because I remember saying earlier on that his mentor Delmore Schwartz taught him how to write very simply, short words, short sentences, and this is a good example of that. So, please come over to 81st Street. I'm in the apartment above the bar. You know you can't miss it. It's across from the subway and the tacky store with the mylar scarves. So he makes ordinary objects. He uses their product name and sticks it out there. It's like the soup cans, isn't it, I guess? And the Brillo pads, all that stuff. My skin is as pale as an outdoors moon. My hair is silver like a Tiffany watch. I like lots of people around me, but don't kiss hello, and please don't touch. So he pretended he didn't really want to talk to people or deal with them, but he needed them. He was hungry for them. That's what you get from this album. Yeah, I heard you couldn't touch him. You weren't allowed to touch him. They said he was like a lizard. You're not supposed to touch lizards because they're cold-blooded animals. I think that's the right term.
Wow, that fits in with, I guess, bad skin, bad eyes, gay and fatty, like just this kind of.
What's it mean by fatty? He doesn't seem fat to me. Was he fat when he was a kid?
Maybe as a kid, I could picture him being chubby. I don't know. Or just no muscle, I guess. Lou Reed really nails these lines here, huh? Skin's as pale as an outdoors moon, hair is silver like just great vocalization there. Huh? Great vocal work there, I would say.
Yeah.
So
that's where he lives, the 81st Street, or is that the factory?
Well, he does say apartment. I always took it to be his, but maybe the factory could be loosely referred to as an apartment. Maybe that was its original intention.
Yeah.
Who knows? Okay, so this is the track you were just mentioning, track 2 on the album, Open House. We'll play a bit of this. It was hard to stop that song.
Yeah, I know.
It continues on beautifully. Yeah, great. Another great track, right? Yeah, I gotta go soon. My wife's giving me a look, but okay. But yeah, one thing I wanted to mention, it didn't occur to me that it's only John Cale and Lou Reed on this. I thought there would be other music, because it exists like very kind of big in my head. So I thought there's probably like a team of musicians that are playing at different points in the album. But actually, no, it's just John Cale, vocals, keyboards, viola, Lou Reed, vocals, guitar. Like that. That's all it is. I mean, that's rather amazing. No drums anywhere on the album.
That's right. I never noticed that. I've never thought about it. No drums. Yeah. New York has drums, doesn't it? It has a full band. It's got a band, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't exactly think of it as like a minimalist album, but it totally is, right? So that's fascinating. Well, what I was going to say about the anti-Warholism we talked about a bit. When I was writing that Warhol paper, when I was working on my master's, and there was a certain like part where it was online, and right, and you're just supposed to bounce ideas off your classmates and get feedback from your classmates. And some woman just seemed outraged that I was writing about Andy Warhol. She's like, how could you even write about a guy who could only paint soup cans or something? And this is 5 years ago, like this is not like, this is not like in the mid 70s. This is like fairly recently, like someone has that attitude about Warhol that that his work is dismissible. I was shocked by that. Like, wow.
How did you answer that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think I probably just wrote, because it was like an email thing. I probably just wrote something like, okay, thanks for your input. But it's not always of great value to talk to your classmates about things when you're working on projects, right? I mean, but then I remember the woman when she did give me feedback later in the semester when she had a chance to read part of it, and she's like, okay, I could, like then she finally conceded that there was some value to Andy Warhol. But yeah, that was just her hot take, is like, why would you write about such a ridiculous artist? Which that was surprising to me. But
well, she knew about the soup cans, didn't she? Obviously.
Yeah.
So it must have got to her at some level at some point.
Yeah.
Before you had that conversation.
Yeah. But that initial just annoyance that people felt at his work is still kind of intact. Decades, like half.
That would please him a lot, wouldn't it?
Half a
that
century.
Would please him.
It would please him. Yeah, I think so. Okay, well, I thought we could go out with a bit of faces and names, because we've played a bunch of the songs that Lou Reed sings on the album, but John Cale also does a lot of great vocal work on this album. We didn't want to shortchange John Cale.
Yeah, especially if he sees his photo, you think, "Where's my voice?"
Yeah.
You better put it up there.
Yeah. Well, I thought you and I were friends. I wouldn't want him to be upset with me. So, well, David, what do you think in conclusion?
Well, in conclusion, I think this album is worth your effort. If you've never listened to the Velvet Underground, this is a great entry point to that whole world that Warhol facilitated back in the 60s. If you listen to this underground music, because we do need some sort of introduction when you listen to new music, don't you? And this is a perfect introduction to the Velvets and that time, pre-internet time as well, an analog universe that people lived in. That's all I want to say, and I love this album, and I think everyone should. And then you can be my friend as well.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
Yeah. It's kind of unexpectedly a great entry point. right?
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like it would be when you look at the cover and you think about the concept. Like it would, I could see it being daunting, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's very easy to listen to and enjoy. Let's see. Okay. Well, on that note, all right. So thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That has been
Bye.
episode 71 of Blown Speakers. Thank you, Dr. David Griffiths, for joining us with your expertise. That's a lot of fun. And we'll certainly do it again with some other material. But okay, we're gonna go out with a bit of faces and names. Okay, good night, everyone.
I haven't listened to much of his.
Oops, sorry.
Faces and names, I wish they were the same. Faces and names only cause trouble for me. Faces and names.